The kingdom of Ethel was a jewel burnished by the sun. Its great pyramids of sandstone and alabaster scraped the sky, their golden tips gleaming like captured stars. The people were as resilient as the river reeds that lined the mighty life-giving Nile, their laughter echoing through bustling markets filled with the scent of cinnamon and myrrh. For generations they had known only peace and prosperity under the wise rule of their kings. But a shadow had fallen, a creeping dread that no army could fight. It was a plague, silent and merciless, that stole the breath from the strong and the light from the eyes of the young. It left no marks but a chilling stillness, a slow fading of the soul. King Ark, a man whose strength had once been the stuff of legend, was now a pale reflection of his former self. The sickness had taken root deep within him, sapping the vitality from his limbs and clouding his once sharp mind. He would sit upon his throne, his powerful frame slumped, gazing out at a kingdom he could no longer protect. The healers offered prayers and potions, but the gods seemed to have turned their faces away. The vibrant energy of Ethel was draining away, replaced by a hushed, fearful waiting. The markets grew quiet, the songs ceased, and the once joyful festivals were forgotten, lost to the suffocating grip of the encroaching plague. The people of Ethel suffered alongside their king. Families huddled in their homes, fearing the unseen enemy that drifted on the desert wind. The farmers who tended the fertile lands found their strength failing them before the harvest was complete. The soldiers who guarded the kingdom's borders felt a weariness that no amount of rest could cure. Every sunrise brought with it a fresh wave of despair, another friend or family member lost to the silent illness. It was a slow-motion catastrophe, a curse that threatened to turn their golden civilization into a forgotten ruin, buried beneath the sands of time and sorrow. This was the world Prince Obelisk was sworn to inherit, a kingdom in its twilight hour. He saw the grief etched on the faces of his people and felt the heavy weight of their collective fear. He watched his father, the man he admired more than any god or hero, wither before his very eyes. The helplessness was a poison in itself, a bitter pill for a young man whose heart was forged from courage and action. He knew that prayers and patience were not enough. The shadow over Ethel demanded a champion, a hero who would not wait for salvation but would chase it across the very fabric of existence if necessary. Prince Obelisk was named for the towering stone monuments that his ancestors had raised to the sun gods. The name fit him perfectly. He was tall, with shoulders as broad as a temple door, and his presence filled any room he entered. His strength was not merely physical, it was a force of will, an unbreakable spirit that refused to bow to despair. His skin was the color of sun-baked earth, and his eyes held the fierce, dark intensity of a hunting falcon. While others saw a kingdom fading, Obelisk saw a nation that needed its strength rekindled, and he was determined to be the one to strike the first spark of a new fire. He was a prince, yes, but in his heart, he was a protector. The traditions of Ethel were ancient and unyielding. To prove his worthiness to one day wear the crown, a prince had to face the trial of the Colosseum. This was no mere ceremony. It was a battle for survival, a test of courage against a creature of nightmare. For Obelisk, the challenge was a behemoth known as the Karkadan, a monstrous rhino of mythic proportions. It possessed 6 powerful legs that churned the arena sand into a storm, 3 razor-sharp horns that could pierce bronze shields, and a hide as thick as granite. It was a beast born of chaos, a living symbol of the kingdom's current struggle against an overwhelming force. Obelisk did not enter the arena adorned in the finery of a prince. He came as a gladiator, a warrior of the people. His only armor was a leather kilt and hardened bracers on his forearms. In his hands he carried the tools of the arena, a heavy crescent-bladed axe and a sturdy round shield. He was not relying on enchanted armor or blessed weapons. He was relying on himself, on the muscles he had honed through years of training, the reflexes he had sharpened in countless sparring matches, and the sheer unadulterated courage that burned within his chest. He stood alone on the sand, a single man against a monster, ready to prove he was worthy of his name. The crowd watched in terrified silence as the great gates were raised and the Karkadan thundered into the arena. Its roar was a physical blow, a sound of pure rage that shook the stone foundations of the Colosseum. But Obelisk did not flinch. He planted his feet, raised his shield, and met the beast's furious gaze with his own unwavering stare. This was more than a trial for a crown. It was a declaration. It was his vow to the kingdom and to his ailing father that he would not be broken. He would face any monster, any challenge, and he would emerge victorious, a beacon of hope for his suffering people. The Karkadan charged, a living avalanche of muscle and horn. The ground trembled with each of its 6 thudding steps. Obelisk stood his ground, a lone pillar against the storm. He waited until the very last second, when the beast's hot breath washed over him, and then he dove to the side. The monster's central horn scraped against his shield, sending a shower of sparks into the air and a jarring shock up his arm. He rolled back to his feet, his axe already in motion, and swung it hard against the creature's hind leg. The blade bit deep, and the Karkadan roared in pain and fury, turning to face him once more. The fight was a brutal dance. Obelisk was a whirlwind of calculated motion, using his agility to counter the rhino's overwhelming power. He dodged, he weaved, he struck when the opportunity arose. The sand of the arena floor became his ally, allowing him to slide and pivot away from the beast's deadly charges. The Karkadan, enraged and wounded, grew more reckless. It smashed against the arena walls, sending chunks of stone flying, trying to corner the nimble prince. But Obelisk was always one step ahead, his mind as sharp as his axe, analyzing the monster's every move and predicting its attacks before they happened. He was not just fighting with his body, he was fighting with his heart. With every blow he landed, he thought of his father, frail and weak on his throne. With every narrow escape, he pictured the faces of his people, their eyes filled with a desperate hope. This monster was the plague made flesh, a mindless, destructive force that sought to trample everything he loved. Defeating it was not about glory or a title. It was about proving that even the most terrifying darkness could be met with courage. It was about showing his kingdom that they were not helpless, that one person's determination could turn the tide. Finally, the moment came. The Karkadan, exhausted and bleeding from a dozen wounds, made one last, desperate charge. Obelisk did not dodge this time. He braced himself, planting his feet deep in the sand. As the beast bore down on him, he dropped his shield and gripped his axe with both hands. With a mighty roar that rivaled the monster's own, he swung the axe in a powerful upward arc, striking the beast directly under its massive jaw. The blow was immense, a testament to his incredible strength. The Karkadan stumbled, its charge broken and crashed to the ground, silenced forever. For a moment there was a stunned silence, and then the Colosseum erupted in a deafening roar of triumph. In the deepest vault of the royal palace, hidden away from all but the king's bloodline, lay Ethel's greatest secret. It was not a crown of jewels or a mountain of gold. It was a single glove, known as the Celestial Gauntlet. It was crafted from a metal that shimmered like a captured nebula, swirling with the deep purples and blues of a twilight sky, dotted with pinpricks of light that shone like distant stars. Ancient legends said it was forged from the heart of a fallen star by the first king of Ithil, a man who had communed with cosmic beings. The gauntlet was cool to the touch, yet it seemed to hum with a latent otherworldly energy. The power of the Celestial Gauntlet was beyond anything the kingdom's mages or priests could comprehend. It was not a weapon of war or a tool for creation. Its purpose was far more profound. It allowed the wearer to tear open the very fabric of reality, to create a shimmering doorway between worlds. It was a key to the multiverse, a device that could navigate the infinite sea of alternate existences that lay just beyond their own. For centuries, it had remained a ceremonial object, its true power untested and feared. No king had ever faced a crisis so dire that they dared to use it. King Ark, summoning the last of his strength, brought his son to the vault. He explained the gauntlet's purpose to Obelisk, his voice a hoarse whisper. He told him of the legends, of the infinite other worlds that might exist, worlds with different suns, different magics, and perhaps different medicines. The cure for their plague might not exist in Ithil, but somewhere out there, in a reality they couldn't even imagine, a solution might be waiting. The risk was enormous. To step through such a portal was to leave everything you knew behind, with no guarantee of a safe return. It was a journey into the ultimate unknown. Obelisk looked at the gauntlet, its cosmic light reflecting in his determined eyes. He saw not a terrifying risk, but a sliver of hope, the only one they had left. The trial in the Colosseum had tested his body and his courage. This was a different kind of test, a test of his faith and his resolve. He knew what he had to do. The answer to their suffering was not buried in the sand or hidden in a pyramid. It was out there, across the veil of their own world. The celestial gauntlet was not just a relic, it was their last chance, and he was the one who would have to wield it. The decision was made, but it settled upon Obelisk's shoulders with the weight of a mountain. To leave his home now, when his father and his people needed him most, felt like a betrayal. But to stay and watch them all fade away was honestly just unthinkable. His heart was torn between his duty as a son and his duty as a savior. He stood on a high balcony of the palace looking out over the city as the twin moons rose in the sky. The air, which should have been filled with the sounds of a vibrant night, carried only a sorrowful silence. He was choosing to abandon all that was familiar for a quest that might be impossible. He went to his father's chambers one last time. King Ark was asleep, his breathing shallow. The plague had aged him decades in a matter of months. Obelisk knelt by the bedside, taking his father's frail hand in his own powerful one. He made a silent vow, a promise that echoed not in the room, but in the deepest chambers of his soul. He would not fail. He would scour 1,000 worlds if he had to. He would battle demons and monsters. He would plead with gods and scholars. He would do whatever it took to find a cure in return. His love for his father was the fuel for his journey, a fire that would keep him going in the darkest of times. His preparations were simple. He did not pack treasures or royal garments. He trusted only in what he knew. He donned his gladiator's attire, the familiar leather kilt and braces. He strapped his trusted crescent axe to his back and his shield to his arm. These were the tools that had saved him in the Colosseum. They were an extension of his own strength and will. His only other possession was the celestial gauntlet. He slipped it onto his left hand, and it seemed to mold to his skin, its starry light pulsing gently, as if in response to his resolute heartbeat. He was not a prince embarking on a royal tour. He was a warrior on a desperate mission. As he stood before the great gate of the palace, ready to depart, the royal guard and the members of the court watched him with a mixture of awe and fear. They saw their champion, the victor of the Colosseum, now venturing into a realm beyond myth. He did not offer a grand speech or a royal proclamation. He simply turned, met their gazes with his own steady one, and gave a single determined nod. It was a promise to all of them, a silent oath that he carried their hopes with him. He was their obelisk, their pillar of strength, and he would not crumble. Obelisk walked out into the desert, away from the city lights, until he was alone under the vast star-dusted canopy of the night sky. The cool sand shifted under his feet, a familiar feeling he had known his entire life. The air smelled of dry earth and distant river water. This was his home, every grain of sand, every distant constellation. Leaving it was like tearing a part of himself away. He took a deep breath, memorizing the scent, the feel of the wind, the sight of the twin moons hanging like silver pendants in the heavens. This was the image he would carry with him, a memory to anchor him in the chaos that was to come. He raised his left hand, the celestial gauntlet gleaming with an ethereal light that outshone the moons. He focused his will, his entire being, on the single desperate thought of finding a cure. He poured all his hope, his love for his father, and his devotion to his kingdom into the ancient artifact. The gauntlet responded. The pinpricks of light on its surface began to swirl faster and faster, coalescing into a brilliant vortex of energy in front of him. The air crackled and a shimmering vertical tear in reality opened before him, a doorway of swirling colors and distorted light. It hummed with a strange alien music. The portal was both terrifying and mesmerizing. It did not show what was on the other side, only a chaotic dance of light and shadow, a glimpse into the raw energy that flowed between worlds. It was a leap of absolute faith. For a moment he hesitated. Every instinct screamed at him to stay on the solid ground he knew, to remain in the world that, for all its suffering, was his. But then the image of his father's weary face flashed in his mind, and his resolve hardened like steel. His fear was nothing compared to the suffering of his people. His personal safety was a small price to pay for their survival. Without a second glance back at the kingdom he was leaving behind, Obelisk took a determined step forward. He plunged into the swirling vortex of the portal, his gladiator's tools his only companions, his unbreakable hope his only guide. The world of Ethel, with its golden pyramids and twin moons, vanished behind him. He was adrift in the multiverse, a lone warrior from a dying world, propelled by a love so strong it could bend the rules of existence. His quest had truly begun. He was no longer just a prince or a gladiator. He was a voyager between the stars, a seeker of miracles. The transition was a dizzying, violent rush of sensation. Obelisk felt as if he were being pulled apart and reassembled atom by atom. Colors he had never seen before flashed behind his eyes, and sounds that had no source filled his ears. Then, as suddenly as it began, it was over. He stumbled forward, his boots landing not on sand, but on soft, springy moss that glowed with a faint blue light. He took a breath, and the air was thick and humid, smelling of damp earth and enormous alien blossoms. He was in a forest, but it was unlike any forest he could have imagined. The trees were the titans of this world. They were colossal, their trunks wider than his father's palace, stretching up so high that their tops were lost in a permanent, misty canopy. Strange bioluminescent fungi grew in vibrant patterns on their bark, casting the entire forest in a perpetual dreamlike twilight. There were no birds, but he could hear soft, melodic whispers drifting through the air, seeming to come from the giant trees themselves. It felt as if the entire forest was alive and speaking in a language he could almost, but not quite, understand. This world was ancient, serene, and intimidatingly vast. His mission, however, had not changed. He was not here to marvel at the scenery. He began to search, his eyes scanning the alien flora for anything that looked medicinal, anything that radiated a healing energy. He moved cautiously, his hand never far from the handle of his axe. Though the world seemed peaceful, he knew that appearances could be deceiving. His gladiator's instincts were on high alert, sensing a presence that was not the whispering trees. He heard a rustling in the giant undergrowth, a sound too heavy to be a small creature. He was not alone in this glowing jungle. From behind a colossal mushroom, a creature emerged. It was a predator, built for ambush, with skin that mimicked the patterns of the glowing moss. It had a sleek panther-like body, but its head was a horrifying blossom of sharp, crystalline teeth, and it moved on 6 insectoid legs. The beast let out a chittering hiss and lunged. Obelisk reacted instantly, bringing his shield up to absorb the impact. The clash of crystal teeth on bronze echoed through the quiet forest. His first test in this new world had arrived, and he met it with the same grim determination he had shown in the Colosseum. The battle was swift and brutal. The crystal-jawed predator was fast, but Obelisk was stronger. He used the creature's own momentum against it, sidestepping its lunges and bringing his axe down hard on its jointed legs. The beast was relentless, but it had never faced a foe with such disciplined combat skills. In the end, it was the prince's unwavering focus that won the day. A final, powerful swing of his axe silenced the creature, its crystalline teeth shattering against the forest floor. He stood over the defeated beast, his breathing heavy, the whispers of the giant trees seeming to grow calmer around him. After the fight, Obelisk discovered something remarkable. Where the creature's crystalline blood had spilled upon the glowing moss, a new kind of plant began to sprout with incredible speed. It grew into a delicate silver flower that pulsed with a gentle, healing light. He carefully plucked one, and as he held it, he could feel a soothing warmth spread through his hand. It was not the cure he was looking for. He could sense it was not powerful enough to combat the plague, but it was a sign. It was proof that healing existed in these other worlds, that his quest was not in vain. This small flower was a symbol of hope. He stayed in the forest of whispering giants for what felt like days, learning and observing. He discovered pools of water that shone with liquid light and fruits that chimed with soft music when picked. He saw creatures that flew on wings of woven leaves, and others that swam through the air as if it were an ocean. Each new discovery was a wonder, but each also reminded him of how far he was from his goal. The silver flower, while a hopeful sign, was not the answer. He knew he had to keep moving. His father's time was running out. Clutching the small glowing flower as a memento of his first journey, he once again raised the celestial gauntlet. He thought of his kingdom, of the sun on the desert sand, and of the promise he had made. The gauntlet blazed to life, its starlight energy tearing another hole in the fabric of this reality. He gave one last look at the colossal whispering trees and the soft blue glow of the moss. This world had offered him a glimmer of hope, and for that, he was grateful. But his quest was far from over. He stepped into the portal, leaving the world of giants behind for whatever lay next. The next world was a stark contrast to the last. Obelisk emerged onto a floating island of obsidian, drifting in a sky the color of amethyst. Below him, a sea of swirling silver clouds churned slowly, and in the distance, other islands floated, connected by bridges made of pure, solidified light. The air was thin and cold, and a constant low hum vibrated through the very rock he stood on. This was a world of sharp edges and silent majesty, a place that felt both beautiful and profoundly empty. There was no sign of life, no plants, no animals, only the silent ballet of the floating islands. He remembered his purpose, the reason he endured these strange and lonely places. It was for his father, whose face he pictured in his mind, and for his people, whose hopeful eyes were the last thing he had seen. This memory was his shield against the overwhelming loneliness of the multiverse. It was his motivation to keep walking, to keep searching. The love for his kingdom was a fire inside him, warming him against the cold air of this new world. He was not just a traveler, he was an anchor, a connection to a home that was waiting for him to save him. His journey was a testament to his unbreakable spirit. Each new world presented new dangers and new wonders. He battled creatures of living shadow in a realm of perpetual twilight, and navigated treacherous canyons on a world where the ground itself was alive and shifting. He saw suns of every color and skies with no suns at all. Through it all, his gladiator's tools and his indomitable will were his only constants. He never forgot who he was or why he was fighting. He was Obelisk, son of Ark, prince of Ethel, and he would not give up. As he stood on the edge of the Obsidian Island, gazing across the sea of clouds toward the next bridge of light, he felt no despair. He felt only a profound sense of purpose. The path ahead was unknown, fraught with unimaginable perils, but it was also filled with infinite possibilities. Somewhere out there, in the endless tapestry of worlds, the cure was waiting. He tightened his grip on his axe, the celestial gauntlet pulsing on his hand like a second heartbeat. With hope as his compass and courage as his sword, Obelisk stepped onto the Bridge of Light, ready to face whatever came next.